Hey everyone, welcome back to all my listeners. Hope you're all having a great day so far. And if it's your first time finding me, thanks so much and welcome. Welcome to episode 16 of my third season. Today is Wednesday, August 18th, 2021. My name is Sonal Patel, and this is the Paint the Medical Picture podcast series. Now, I can't believe I'm seeing those yellow little school buses on the roads already. How can our summer be almost over? And the nights here are getting cooler and cooler as September approaches. And I also cannot believe I'm just one episode away from my first full year of podcasting. 52 episodes I developed and curated into 3 amazing seasons with my outstanding guests from healthcare attorneys, physicians, medical coders, medical auditors, entrepreneurs, and healthcare compliance professionals. Thank you so much for making my first full year of podcasting incredible. Now, in my compliance tip today, I'm going to be diving into Targeted Probe and Educate, TPE, that program developed by CMS. It's ramped back up again. And I also roll out the red carpet, throw confetti, pour up Johnny Walker Black Label, and welcome my special guest today, Sean Weiss. And I round out today's episode with an inspiring quote on journeys from Pope Francis. If you've checked me out on LinkedIn, you know I'm all about compliance and protecting our physicians and valued healthcare professionals when it comes to the business of medicine. I hope this week with me brings you enough to take back to your organizations, to want to dive in deeper, to use my tips and best practices to ensure success. I hope this podcast will help you boost the quality of documentation capture and improve coding accuracy as you help your providers paint the medical picture. If you like what you're hearing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss another episode. Please write in a review and kindly drop me a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to my podcast. I'd really love your support. And as always, a friendly disclaimer. Remember, I'm bringing you the news, current healthcare industry news, my compliance tips and recommendations based on my over 10 years of experience in front office, back end, coding, and billing for multi-specialty physicians, compliance, and auditing for both E&M and surgical operative reports. These are my opinions alone and are not to be construed as legal advice. So let's get into a very special Newsworthy that features my guest today, Sean Weiss. I'm so excited to introduce him to all of you. Now, Sean is a partner and serves as Vice President and Chief Compliance Officer of DoctorsManagement, a full-scale practice management and regulatory consultancy based in Knoxville, Tennessee. Sean has worked in healthcare since 1996 in a variety of capacities and for some of the nation's largest health systems. Sean became a certified coder in 1997 through what was then known as the American Academy of Professional Coders, that's our AAPC, and later earned his certifications on the payer side and as an auditor. Sean holds his certifications with HCCA, the MGMA, NAMUS, PMI, and BAMC as a compliance officer, auditor, medical practice executive, and advanced coding specialist in evaluation and management services. Sean is the former VP and Chief Compliance Officer of Decision Health Professional Services, a Decision Health company, and one of the founding members of the CMC Group, a full-scale medical consulting, education, and health law firm. Sean has multiple books in publication as an author or a co-author under the CMC, MMI, Contexo, and Decision Health brands. Sean also served as a compliance officer and senior analyst for Tenet Health Systems of the Southeast region in the late 1990s, and as a physician services consultant and member of the Ethics and Compliance Steering Committee for Columbia HCA during the early 2000s. Sean has spent years working with members of our Congress, providing a voice for healthcare providers on key legislative issues. Sean has been published in numerous industry journals, including Medical Economics, Part B News, BC Advantage, The Coding Edge, MGMA Connections, and so many, many others. Wow, wow, wow. That's huge, Sean. I am truly honored that you're here with me today. Welcome.
Sonal, thank you so much. And it's kind of embarrassing listening to somebody reading all of those things that you were just reading, because after 26 years, you tend to forget a lot of that stuff because you're so focused on the here and now, and where it is that you're hopefully going. So thank you so much for that really warm and kind introduction. And to be honest with you, the honor and privilege of being on your podcast is all mine. So thank you.
Oh, well, you know what? That bio is incredible, and everyone needs to hear all of your great, great accomplishments. And thank you for being here with me today. I know my audience is simply in for a treat. So welcome, welcome.
Well, thank you.
Now, again, in my opinion, Sean, you are simply renowned in the healthcare compliance arena, right? I mean, heck, you're known as the compliance guy, and I'm sure there's a very good story in there that you can share with my audience. Now, you and I have met a few years ago, of course, through LinkedIn, and you've become one of my trusted colleagues and resources for solid opinion and guidance. Again, it's all about integrity and doing what's right for our providers and other healthcare professionals, and of course, for our peers. But it seems to me like you too are tiptoeing into the world of podcasting. You have the Compliance Guy Live and also something new, Coffee, Compliance, and Chuckleheads. That's a mouthful to say, but those are two podcasts that I think you just recently started up. I have no idea where you find this time, but I know I'm simply grateful for these podcasts. And I know my audience would love to hear some more about your inspiration and why you got these podcasts started. I'd love to hear some more.
Yeah, thank you so much. So for me, the Compliance Guy was really an opportunity to help busy healthcare professionals who don't have the time to sit and research and dig for guidance documents that are not just opinion-based, but fact-based. They're based on cited and well-sourced entities like the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the Department of Justice, the Office of Inspector General, as well as the American Medical Association and specialty societies, to be able to help lessen the burden, if you will, on auditors, coders, billers, compliance professionals, practice managers, administrators who are tasked with all of the previous mentioned roles and jobs to excuse me, help make their lives just a little bit easier each day. And it's my wife has always said I have no problems talking. I could talk about a rock for an hour and not run out of things to say. So I hope that I'm conveying information in a way that is useful, easy to understand, and timely.
I think that's very well said. You are, the way you deliver your speeches, your speaking style, you're very colloquial, right? You can bring people to you based on that style of talking. Very family oriented, very easy to listen to. People can understand it because, as you and I know, healthcare is incredibly, incredibly complicated. And then throw in that legal speak those statutes, those regulations, that gets really tricky and complex, but you have a way, you've got a knack of how to bring your audience in and make things a bit simpler. You can provide people with a higher level approach in the way they look at healthcare. So I think that really helps. Not a lot of people have that. So kudos.
Well, thank you for those kind words. And, as you and I have talked about in the past, I'm not trying to appeal to the fringe few. I'm trying to appeal to the masses, and I'm trying to speak to those auditors, coders, billers, compliance professionals, even attorneys. I mean, I get lots of questions from attorneys via email and direct messages almost on a daily basis who are like, hey, you were talking about this regulation or this statute. Could you help me understand what that is? And, I try to be lighthearted. I try to have fun with everything that I do because we're not really talking about sexy stuff here. And sometimes I think my style, comes off in a way that maybe some people don't like me, but that's okay. You don't have to like me. Just appreciate the content that, is being put out there. And as long as there's one person who's willing to listen to me, I'm going to keep doing it. So.
That's absolutely right. You and I are seasoned enough. I'm not going to state what our ages are, but we are not of that mentality. We're not the youngsters who are interested in the likes and the follow me and the all of that mentality. That is not what we do. You're absolutely right. It's about the content. And if we have people who enjoy what we put out, we definitely hear it loud and clear and we appreciate it. But we don't do this, absolutely not for, the thousands or millions or whatever the youngsters do. That is not what we do here. Nope.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't start my podcast to make money,
right. Or how many downloads and all this nonsense. I'm like, I don't even know where to look for this stuff. I just look at Apple Podcasts and that's it. I know there's many other ways you can look. I don't know what those are, but I'm just happy that people like your new podcast. I'm happy that they're finding it. And hopefully with my audience, some more people can latch on and appreciate this new fun way of listening to the news and things that are important in healthcare.
Absolutely. And, the compliance guy, really takes a serious, hard look at, the rules, regulations, statutes, laws, guidance documents that are perplexing to a lot of folks. And I try to disseminate that information and break it down in a very easy to use, simple manner. The other podcast that I do is Coffee, Compliance, and Chuckleheads. And for me, that's really kind of my escape from reality because I get to work with two great chuckleheads, Eric Rubenstein and Jordan Johnson, who are really industry disruptors. They're thought leaders.
Yes.
They're just wealth of information. They're the male versions of you.
It's funny. That's funny. No, they both really do. And I know them well. They both have an amazing understanding of the breadth of healthcare. You can talk to them about literally any topic and they know about it. Yeah, they can speak about it very clearly. It's amazing to talk to those two gentlemen. Absolutely. So I am going to be tuning in now week after week for this new podcast as well. So
good deal.
Happy. All right. Let me move on to my next question here. Now, we all have a past and a history, and you and I were talking a bit before I hit the record button here, but we all have a past and a history. I know from my own past career, my own previous journey into something completely different, right? I was an art historian, curating the life of museums, but life doesn't always promise you all your early dreams and goals, right? You may have to reevaluate, adjust your path, course correct, so to speak. If you can, I'd hope you could share some of the steps you took to get you here today. I hope you could talk to us a bit more about your journey into becoming the amazing, ridiculously accomplished compliance professional you are today.
Well, again, I'm so humbled by your words and really just so appreciative for the opportunity to sit down and talk to you. I agree with you. I think all of us go through a journey in life. We all have our plights. We all have, hopefully, our successes. We hit plateaus. We look for ways to be able to push through those. If you would have told me 26, almost 27 years ago that I'd be sitting in front of a microphone, multiple times a week, or that I'd be, in federal courtrooms or medical board disciplinary hearings or administrative law judge hearings, I would have looked at you and said, I have no earthly clue as to what it is that you're talking about. Because for me, my life's journey, at least coming out of high school and going into college, I honestly thought I was going to be a doctor. I had always had an aspiration to be either an orthopedic surgeon or a neurosurgeon. And, for me, science and, how the physiological aspect of a human being was made up and how it worked and the mechanics of building things, taking them apart, rebuilding them, was always fascinating to me. And in my time in school, I got to a point where life kind of got in the way. And I don't get an opportunity a lot to talk about it. And it's not because of embarrassment or anything like that. Sometimes it's just hard to do. For me, I had distractions in school. Unfortunately, my brother, who was really my first mentor, my best friend, my biggest supporter, through my years of playing football and baseball and those kind of things, became one of the statistics battling mental illness. And unfortunately, he took his life. And for me, having to put school aside at that time and not pursue my dream to be able to look after my mother, who unfortunately was suffering from a mental breakdown from what happened. And, just 2 short years prior to that, had to leave school the first time because, my father, was diagnosed with a terminal illness and had to go home to help take care of him. So for me, like you said in the beginning, I'm very family oriented. So for me, taking care of my family and putting aside myself, which, isn't always easy to do as a kid, seemed like the right thing to do at that time. And by the time I had kind of gotten my head screwed back on straight, so to speak, the desire to go back to study medicine sort of lost its luster because of some of what I had gone through watching my father pass and my brother pass. And I know a lot of people look at that and go, no, that's the reason why I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to fix healthcare. But, I started looking at really the situation that our industry was in. We had moved away from usual, customary, and reasonable reimbursements to something called a discount fee for service, something called the RBRVS. I call it really bad reimbursement, very slowly.
Perfect.
Right?
Yes.
But for the young people that are like, well, what is RBRVS? It stands for the resource-based relative value scales. And for me, I started looking at that and I was like, I'm going to go back into school. I'm going to come out with hundreds of thousands of dollars of loans. I'm not going to be able to run a business the way I want to run it, because back then, we're starting to see capitation really take shape and contracts it was just crazy. So for me, it was all about getting my business education. I met some attorneys just by chance through a friend. They were telling me they were into healthcare, and I was like, really? Okay. And kind of got fascinated with that whole story and sort of changed my direction and focused on health law, the business of medicine, and regulatory compliance. And it's just been an evolution of, my professional life since then. So since 1999, really.
What an incredible journey. I mean, you encountered hardship and loss at a young age, right? Many of your characteristics today, I think, stem and shape you because of that loss, right? Lots of people lose loved ones later in their life and have to go through these processes like you did. But like you said, you had to deal with it as a kid. You were just a kid. And those types of sacrifices reflect your character. There's no character building. You already had it at that young age. That's what I'm hearing. And I think that's definitely shaped you, into this profession. This profession is all about character and integrity, right? So from an early age, you already evoked it because of what you went through.
Yeah. And, the other side to that, obviously, with heartache, there's also, heart warmth.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yes.
Meeting my incredibly beautiful, talented, intelligent wife, Jill,
Mm-hmm.
who I often question how she wound up with me or how I got so lucky to have her. But, then came 3 amazing kids who are all grown now. Our oldest daughter is 30, our son is 27, our youngest daughter is 25, and we have 5 grandbabies who are 10, 6, 4, 2, and 1. So, with all of the heartache, came the family aspect, right? The wife and the kids. And, it was like, okay, hey, again, this is not just about me. This is about us. So,
Right.
Buckle down, find a career,
Right.
Anybody could find a job, right?
Exactly.
A job is just something that you show up to as a warm body to collect a paycheck.
Right.
A career is something that you do because you have passion. You want to succeed at something. And, I set a lot of, lofty goals for myself because I had some incredible mentors. And I watched their levels of success. And, I said, I want to emulate that. And someday I want, somebody to look back and say, one of my mentors was this crazy guy, Sean Weiss. And, he taught me how to be humble and, taught me that, the MO of a great consultant is not telling somebody how to get to where they need to be, but it's listening to them, hearing them, and letting them talk their own way into what they want as an outcome. And then they'll look at you and be like, you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. I appreciate that. Thank you. But you did the heavy lifting.
So well said. You're absolutely right. There is no template to be a great consultant. You have to find your own path. You have to carve it on your own. All the mentors are wonderful. All the advice is so good to receive, but absolutely, you do have to walk your own walk, right?
Absolutely. Well said.
That's amazing. Amazing, Sean. Wow. And you are a family man, like I stated. I mean, I have a teenage son who, doesn't know what he's going to be, senior in high school. So, different generations, right? So I try not to push him into anything. He will figure it out. But you're absolutely right. It's about a career, not just having a job to pay those bills. You need to find commitment and passion in anything that makes you happy.
Absolutely. And, it's like we talked about, um, I was really raised by my grandparents for the most part. And, my granddad was just an incredible individual, military man, retired as the senior vice president of Chrysler Corporation under Lee Iacocca. And, I remember him telling me, at a young age, listen, don't ever do anything because you think you're going to get rich at it. Do something because you're passionate and because you have an appreciation for it. And if you can do that, the money will come. And, as long as you can put a roof over your head, food on the table, and clothes on your back for you and your family, beyond that, the rest of it's just gravy. And I've tried to live my life by those words. And, for me, it's all about having, at the end of the day, a career and trying to create a legacy that I could leave behind for others to be able to carry that torch forward into the next phase of healthcare, whatever that's going to be.
Well said. Legacy. That's what we all need to strive for, right? Having a legacy that we can share with others. It's perfect. Perfect, Sean. All right. Now let's move on to my next question. All right. Now, I know I'm all about proactive compliance in 2021 and beyond, working smarter for coding compliance and affecting change in this space of healthcare. But I want to hear your perspectives. I want to hear your voice. Why do you still see such a disconnect and apathy towards the value add that compliance brings to providers and healthcare practices? How are we continuing to miss the mark? Or better yet, what can we do to better implement living, breathing, active compliance programs into each and every independent, small, medium, large healthcare entity across the country? What advice can you give to help encourage compliance professionals in the everyday work they perform?
I think that's a great question. And, it has always been a struggle with solo practices, small group practices, to get them to understand that the costs associated on the front side to building a culture of compliance is much cheaper than having to do it on the back end. I spend, out of 365 days in a calendar year, I bet I probably spend somewhere around 275 to 280 days a year, either in administrative law judge hearings, medical board disciplinary reviews, peer-to-peer reviews with insurance company medical directors and providers of these small physician practices, large group practices, hospital systems, health systems, as well as time in federal court, mediation, arbitration. When it comes to federal court, both civil and federal, state court, both. And, unfortunately, I think there's always been this thought process by physicians that kind of trickled down, if you will, onto their practice managers, their practice administrators, that, we live in rural USA, or I'm just a small one doctor provider. Nobody's looking at me. Well, that's just not the case, because everything now puts all of the demographics aside, and it strictly looks at data utilization and data patterns. So for me, it's no longer, and it's been this way for probably a decade, it's no longer a matter of if when you get audited, or I should say, it's no longer a matter of if you get audited, it's a matter of when, right? Because the data is going to drive the Office of Inspector General for, a desk audit. It's going to drive the supplemental medical review contractor, the SMRC, into doing their audits. The Unified Program Integrity Contractors, the Recovery Audit Contractors, the Medicaid Integrity Program, the MFUCUs, the SIUs. I mean, we could go on and on and on talking about all of these 3-letter organizations or 4-letter organizations that can audit a provider's practice. So for me, the message that I hope your listeners can take away from this is spend the money up front, do it the right way, and mitigate your risk of not only the potential of being excluded or debarred from the healthcare programs, but also mitigating your financial loss, because a compliance program doesn't always have to be about risk mitigation for law enforcement or litigation purposes. It could also be mitigation of financial loss. And, again, where reimbursements have been either stagnant or declining for as long as I can remember now. And again, we're facing more cuts in 2022 under the proposed rule, right? We're looking at anywhere from a 1 to a potential 10% cut. And everybody keeps saying, oh, well, Congress will act and, at the last minute, they'll intervene and we won't have to worry about it. But this is a long-term cut that has to be implemented at some point. So providers, if I could be blunt, wake the heck up.
Yes.
Pull your head out of the sand. Yeah. Pull your head out of the sand and stop thinking, oh, that's never going to happen to me. Because the minute you say it out loud or you think it, that's when it happens.
Wow. Your insights are profound. I mean, yeah, providers need to wake up. I agree completely. The data miners, I don't know how many articles are written on data mining, but I want providers to take their data back. It's theirs. They create it. They generate it. They should be proper stewards of it. So they can avoid this, grotesque financial loss that they're experiencing today. This is the work that you and I do every day, these post-payment audits. So if we try and flip the coin and put the money in proactively, put the budget in for compliance, it's more than likely you won't be slapped with these green smirk letters in your future or whatever, the RACs, the UPICs, whoever, right? That's exactly what you do. You try and avoid these letters. I mean, yes, this is our profession, but we are on the provider side. We don't want you to be in trouble. So we always try and advise proactive behavior is better than this, paying things back later or saying you can't. And then, because it's millions of dollars often.
Look, I'm a physician advocate. And first and foremost, I will always advocate for physicians, for providers of care.
Yes.
But the thing that they, providers need to understand, and to your point, which I think is such an important point, we work in what's called a pay and chase environment, right? And we work in one of only a handful, if even that many, industries where we don't have to prove what we did at the time that we submit a bill for reimbursements. It's an honor system. Yeah. And that's why on the back end, the penalties are so harsh. The fines are so significant. I get calls on a daily basis from providers. I have one that came in the very first part of this week. It is an ENT practice in the southeastern part of the United States, 3-doctor practice. Healthy Blues wants back $421,000 from this provider group. Now, are there areas where I think the payer made some critical errors in how they perform their audits and how they developed their statistical sample and how they extrapolated their findings? Absolutely. But forget about whether or not it's 421,000. This practice now, because they didn't do it on the front end to make sure that they were coding accurately, that their documentation substantiated the claims that were being billed to the payers. Now they have to hire somebody to come in on the back end, which is not cheap.
That's not cheap. No, it's not.
And, now you've got to, hope that you find somebody with the requisite skills in otolaryngology.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make sure that you find somebody who is proficient in rat stats or in statistical sampling methodologies and post-audit extrapolation to be able to decipher all of that, break it down, find holes in, what the payer did. Did they do a 2T test? It was, was it a one-sided blind test? All of these different things. And these experts cost money. And it costs so much more on the back end to fix a problem than it does to be proactive. And I think that's the message that I hope your listeners get from me. Don't be reactive, be proactive. Take control of your situation. Spend the money. Don't go out and buy one of these $99 compliance plans in a box and think that you could just put your name into the plan, print it out, and stick it on the shelf and you have a compliance program, because you don't. You've got a bigger problem if you do that than not having one, because at least if you don't have one, you can negotiate yourself a CIA agreement, a corporate integrity agreement or a resolution agreement. So pull your head out of the sand and do the right thing. Create a culture of compliance. And until the physician owners of these organizations realize that they are leaders and that their actions have a profound effect on how their staff operates on a day in and day out basis, until they get that, they're just hamsters on a wheel. And that wheel is going to keep spinning until a 3-letter agency puts a piece of rebarb into that spinning wheel, and the hamster goes flying off the wheel, and everybody goes, "Oh no, what just happened?" I mean, it's the truth. There's always somebody who doesn't want to believe the message, and there's always a group of people who don't want to get the message. And the message is crystal clear. 2021 has been the year of the audit. 2022 is going to be the year of the audit on steroids. So hang on.
Hang on. Yes, we're all in for a ride. We're riding right now, but you're right. Next year is going to be mayhem. Mayhem. Can you also remind my listeners, please, of how long providers, private practices have been in the know about this compliance program thing? I believe it's been a few decades.
Yeah, it dates back to 2000.
There you go. So this has been something that should have been done a long time ago. And it's incredible that you and I still see this, like you stated, a 99-cent nonsense template in a box thing. And then they just put it up on the top shelf for 5 to 10 years collecting dust. It's never looked at, worked on, edited, revised, nothing.
No, it's a bookend.
It's a bookend.
It's a paperweight. It's mind-boggling, and it's maddening to me. Nothing makes me more angry than an organization that calls me up and says, "Hey, we'd like you to come in and take a look at our current compliance program, evaluate it for us, and help us kind of, put it together." And the very first question that I have for them is, do you believe your compliance plan is an effective compliance plan? And they're like, "Well," and the second question I ask them is, "Well, okay, you're saying well, so here's my second question. Is it a living, breathing document? Are you at a minimum annually making adjustments to policies and procedures?" And they're like, "Oh, well, we haven't looked at it in about 5 years." And I'm like,
right.
Then why do you even bother to have one? Just
right.
Trash it.
My goodness, Sean, you and I could talk for hours. There's so much we could go into, but we have limited time, of course. So let's move on to my last question. Now, as hopefully my audience has heard on this podcast, you've clearly had an enormous, big career to date. But I'm still curious to know, what are you still striving for, Sean? What's on your wish list? And where am I going to see you in the next 5 years?
Well, hopefully it's not on a most wanted sign
What?
at the post
No,
office.
no way. No way.
In all sincerity, for me, it's never been about titles. It's been about being able to provide information in a way that allows CEOs, COOs, practice administrators to be able to disseminate that information and to deploy it into their organizations. Obviously, for me, having the background that I've had and having the privilege to engage with members of Congress, both in the upper and lower chambers over the course of my career, keeping tabs with some of them even still today. I have always wanted to find myself in politics. I've always, I really have.
Cool.
I would say over the last 15 years, I've really always felt like if I was fortunate enough to run and be elected into Congress or into Senate, which probably will never happen. I felt like I was one, I feel like I'm one of those people who can affect change because, I don't care about the money. I don't care about the accolades. I don't care about the awards or anything like that. I want to fix the broken system. Our system is crippled. We have a Veterans Administration that is beyond repair at this point, unless they are willing to tear it completely down to the foundation and rebuild it. One of my very dear friends, Robert Lyles, who's just a brilliant attorney. He's the former deputy director with the Department of Justice, the first fraud task director for the DOJ. Put me up for a nomination for the deputy director for the Veterans Administration in the previous administration. And, it was something that was being considered, but I just, because of the corruption and the fact that we have so many of our veterans who have been downrange and, who need proper care. It's crazy that the care they get overseas, at Landstuhl or Ramstein or one of those other incredible installations. And I was actually based at Landstuhl for a period of time. From 2009 to 2012, I was at the Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, and I was blessed enough to be able to get to work with the incredible physicians and caregivers at that installation. Worked in the traumatic brain injury unit, and worked with the major who was over the medical center for a period of time, and some of the master sergeants to try to fix the issues that were happening at these installations, because a lot of people don't realize that, they submit claims back here stateside to get reimbursed for their claims. So it's, anyways, long story. But I don't know, for me, I feel like I have maybe about 5 to 7 years left, honestly, working in the capacity and in the role that I'm at right now. I don't know, maybe something will change, but I really hope that in the future I can move into most likely an advisory role for a serious congressperson who wants to fix the problems, not just talk about them, but really fix the problems of our industry. And because, like I said, I don't think anybody would ever vote for me.
Oh, you've got my vote. You've got my vote.
Well, I appreciate
in
that.
5 to 7 years, I'll be voting for you if you put your name in. Absolutely.
I appreciate that. But, I really hope that people can put the partisan politics aside and realize that we have human beings in our country, children, adolescents, adults, geriatrics, suffering from mental illness, suffering from systemic illnesses that are tied to poor nutrition. We have people that can't even get a hot meal. And, you know, if we could just put some of this partisan politics aside, come together as a nation and do what's right for our people, I think we would start to find our way, because I think right now this country is in a giant need of an enema to fix everything that's plaguing us. And I don't mean to be disrespectful in any way. But, you know, I stopped watching the news. I don't read it anymore because it's so depressing. Every day it's the same thing. And it doesn't matter whether you're on the right side of the aisle, the left side of the aisle, or if you're a libertarian or a Green Party, the system's broken and healthcare is broken. And until we get somebody who's serious about wanting to fix it, providers are going to have to stay on top of their compliance. They're going to have to stay on top of their coding, billing, and documentation. They're going to have to dot the I's, cross the T's, and pray to God that their number doesn't get picked.
Well, Sean, I could not agree with you more. I mean, we've fallen off the path, right? I agree with you. Politics is gone mad. You're absolutely right. I mean, left, right, center, it doesn't matter what party you belong to. The news has become quite ugly for quite some time now. I agree with you. And there's so much change and positivity that needs to come back to our people. I agree with you. And I can't wait for people like you to start making a difference, right? To start showing up and making change actually happen, and find those team members, those teammates who can join you in that cause. Because I think as a nation, we all agree our veterans deserve better. Absolutely.
Yeah. And again, I take my hat off to our men and women in uniform,
Yes.
To our law enforcement professionals working every single day to keep, you know, the people safe, and to our first responders, to our nurses, to our doctors. You know, y'all are doing God's work. And, you know, if you don't hear it enough, I hope you hear it at least once from me. I appreciate everything that people are doing to try to, you know, keep us healthy and keep us safe.
That's right. We all just have to start listening collectively. We all have to listen and do what our healthcare providers say. They have our best interests at heart, obviously. They're well educated and trained to keep us safe. Well said. Amazing, Sean. Amazing. Now, you know what? I don't know if I have all the same people in my profile that you do. So where can my listeners find you? Your podcast, your company, everything.
Sure. So, as you said in the beginning, I'm a partner. I serve as the Vice President and Chief Compliance Officer for DoctorsManagement. So people could find us online at www.doctors-management.com. You can find me for my Compliance Guy podcast at www.thecomplianceguy.com. And obviously on LinkedIn, I'm on there every single day. If I'm not doing a live broadcast, we're posting a pre-recorded podcast. We're blogging about DOJ issues, OIG issues, CMS issues, medical specialty issues. I am really, honestly, very approachable. If you have a question, if you have a concern, don't hesitate to direct message me. I'll even give you my email address. If it's cool with you, Sonal, people can reach me at,
absolutely.
Yeah, people could reach me at sweiss, WEISS at DRSMGMT.com. Shoot me an email. Would love to hear from you. I'll do my best to try to help you with your scenarios and your issues. And if I could help just one person, I've done my job.
Excellent, Sean. I'm going to make sure I put everything in my show notes to make it easier for everybody. Thank you so much for your time with me today. Is there anything else you'd like to leave my audience with before you have to go?
No, the last thing that I would like to say is your listeners are very smart for listening to you. You and I met a couple of years ago. We've been following each other. We've been engaging with each other in various dialogues on LinkedIn, over the phone. You were on my show. And again, I just want to say thank you so much for affording me the opportunity to be able to speak with an audience who most likely doesn't know me and probably never would have heard of me if it wasn't for you making it possible for me to be able to come on your podcast. So, Sonal, thank you so much for that. But most importantly, thank you for being a friend and thank you for being such a consummate professional.
Wonderful, Sean. It's my pleasure to have you, and I can't wait to have you back on again anytime you want. So thanks so much. I'll see you next time. And now it's time for my best practice tips in Trusty Tip. So it was just last week that CMS announced it will be restarting the Targeted Probe and Educate program, the TPE program, to help educate providers and reduce future denials and appeals. They go on and say, quote, if your Medicare administrative contractor audits you, take advantage of the TPE education and get up to 3 rounds of educational claim review to help you bill accurately, end quote. Now, of course, the goal is to help you quickly improve. And Medicare administrative contractors, the MACs, will work with you in person if necessary to help you identify errors and help you correct them. Now, many are common errors, and they're simple ones like correcting a missing physician's signature. These are easily corrected. Now, I know I myself have personally had success with the TPE program for multiple providers over the years, but it certainly is a process, and literally every step must be followed. This is CMS still, right? And you have to jump through the hoops their way. And remember, most providers will never need TPE. TPE is intended to increase accuracy in very specific areas. Now, MACs will use data analysis to identify 2 things. First, they're going to identify, again, through the data analyses, if providers and suppliers have high claim error rates or unusual billing practices. And second, they want to identify items and services that have high national error rates and are also then going to be a financial risk to Medicare. Again, this is obvious, but providers whose claims are compliant with Medicare policy will not ever be chosen for TPE. So, what are some common claim errors? Let's go over 4 of them. For example, I stated before the signature is missing. That's something that can be addressed and corrected. The second, documentation does not meet medical necessity. The third, encounter notes do not support all eligibility requirements. And finally, fourth, there are missing or incomplete initial certifications or recertifications. Now, the process starts when you get a TPE letter to your practice in the mail. You'll have to submit between 20 to 30 charts or medical records to support the coordinating 20 to 30 claims the MAC has already received from your practice. Now, there are 3 rounds total, and you'll have 45 days to make changes and improve based on their findings and education to you. Now, if some claims are denied, you'll have the opportunity for PowerPoint-style education. Now, I know I've sat in on these, and they're fabulous, and they help the provider to really understand their deficiencies. And if you're compliant, great job, and CMS will not review you again on this particular topic for 1 year. But what if your accuracy still doesn't improve after those 3 rounds? Any problems that fail to improve after those 3 rounds of education will be referred to CMS for next steps. These may include 100% prepayment review, extrapolation, and referral to a recovery auditor, or perhaps some other ominous action. Wow. So, this ramp up of the TPE program should really have all of us concerned, right? Yes, this is stated to be an education program once again by CMS. But again, the kicker is in the end, right? If you cannot pass the 3 sessions of education, they will take countermeasures to protect the Medicare monies at risk. So it's a great time to dive deeper into your own data. Beat the payers to the punch and pay attention to what you are sending out the door. Is it really in compliance? But by painting all these fine details of the medical necessity into the medical picture, a provider's documentation will support the code selection by its very definition. The medical necessity will be supported for a certified medical coder to then abstract codes with accuracy. And finally, in this week's inspiring quote in Spark, it's from Pope Francis. Life is a journey. When we stop, things don't go right. So very true. I think this is a perfect quote that reminds us to keep going, inspires us to power through any temporary discomfort. We must be brave enough to keep going, keep persisting, keep persevering. Take steps in our journey, knowing that journey sees struggle and hardship, knowing that with each challenge we may be confronted with temporary stress. But we must be able to see the bigger picture, knowing that with our courage, we can make our journey, we can see our journeys to the end. I am happy Pope Francis's spark still burns brightly in all of us today. So that wraps up today's episode. Please go out and make this a great day, an incredible week for yourselves. Aim a little higher, do a little more, and give back in any way you can in 2021. There's so much each one of us can do. As always, I appreciate you diving into today with me. And if you want more information from me, go ahead and follow me on LinkedIn. I'll leave links to everything in the show notes below. Please continue staying safe and healthy. The Delta variant is maddening and continues sweeping through the country, so please consider getting fully vaccinated. I just got back from 2 weeks in Florida, and it's really important to keep masking up, washing up, and staying physically distant from those not in your pod, those not in your squad. This is despite being fully vaccinated, since my squad has those I love, those I want to protect from this newer strain of the coronavirus. So please practice safety for one and all during our collective, seemingly never-ending time in life of coronavirus. Thank you for listening in on today's very special episode, and I hope every week with me brings you closer to helping your providers paint a masterpiece. See you next Wednesday.